I've been trained as a facilitator with the Kairos blanket exercise, and it is Kairos is an organization that is all different religions coming together, and so it's not one denomination. And they actually designed the blanket exercise, and so I facilitated within Grand Prairie and surrounding areas. And so my target audience is, me particularly, is 13 and above. There's no age limit. And I have done everything from Grand Cache, smaller communities. I've gone to Peace River into the penitentiary and done inmates there with the blanket exercise, and lots in and around Grand Prairie. What it looks like is it's an interactive reenactment of Canadian history from the Indigenous side of what's happened. And so history is normally written from the victor's standpoint. This is just the flip side of the coin. So everything is still factual on what's happening, and it's just how people are coming together in a circle and actually seeing what happened throughout Canada. So people are in a circle, they're on the blanket, they are given trading items, they're given scrolls with quotes to read throughout. So we're moving around them, things are happening, they're standing on blankets, the blankets are being taken away, diseases brought in, people are having to sit down because they're dying. And so it actually triggers a lot of emotion during the blanket exercise. A lot of empathy and understanding. And so at the end of the exercise, it is my wish that people leave that experience with more empathy towards Indigenous people in the community, or as a whole. People can actually see it moving and happening to them. They are physically moved off the blankets. They are physically made to sit down because they have died from disease. We have props that we use, and the children are physically taken out of their arms. And so it triggers that emotion in people. I've had people during the exercise break down in tears. The facilitators themselves will also do the same. Sometimes it's just the energy of the group, or something that they've experienced recently in their own personal lives, that different times, different things will even trigger the facilitators. So normally there is 3 to 4 facilitators that are moving around this circle. So it's not just a one facilitator presentation. You have different energies, different voices, different people coming at you at different angles. It's all connected, and I like to open with a prayer from our elder and a smudge, and so we bring that ceremony in. I also will explain the difference of blanket ceremony as compared to a blanket exercise, so participants aren't confused by the two. It's just that retelling of the history, the proclamation, the Indian Act, moving to the reservations, the the statistics of the deaths from tuberculosis, the deaths of when smallpox were introduced, the impact of physically moving participants to residential schools, and how that impacted societies when they come back from residential schools, and how participants are turning their backs on each other. So, it's very, very specific events, and you're physically having to move and turn throughout. So I think that's why it has such an emotional impact on people. And it's not just for non-Indigenous people, it's for Indigenous people also, because a lot of Indigenous people don't even realize how they've been impacted by residential schools, because we're first, second generation that haven't been in, and because our mothers were there and they didn't talk about it, we don't realize how that's impacted us. I think just having that empathy and that understanding of where it's coming from. And so, like I said, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And, we spoke very briefly about the Indian Act being taught in high schools and some of the prejudice around that. And, that's the way it's been taught for so many years, and it's not working. So I think it's identifying that and moving in a different direction. I've had so many different experiences with the participants in the blanket exercise because we do it, it's about 45 to 60 minutes, and then we sit in circle and we share. And, there'll be somebody that I won't think that we have really touched or impacted during the exercise, but then they share in that circle, and it's touched them to their core, to the point where they're going home and they're speaking to their families, and they're encouraging their friends and their families and their children to get to a blanket exercise, to experience a blanket exercise. And because we don't talk a lot about what exactly happens, so that people are experiencing it when they come. If they can take what they've learned from the blanket exercise and understanding where the Indigenous people have been damaged, and the ripple effect from the residential schools, and they have that understanding, and you turn around and are a little bit more empathetic to somebody, then to me that was a success. For me, Indigenous education is not only educating non-Indigenous people about Indigenous ways, but also re-educating Indigenous people back to their culture. And so for myself, being first generation from residential, my mom was in residential school, so I'm the first generation that was impacted by that. I don't know my language. I've never been brought to powwows and stuff like that. So I've lost that touch with culture. And for an Indigenous woman, an Métis woman, I think it's really important, if somebody is seeking that those avenues for education should be there. It's that spiritual aspect. It's bringing the sitting and talking with the elders. It's learning what they can still share with us. And I know that a lot of them were in residential schools, so it's not going to be the way that it was. And so that has changed. And so I think it's the newer version, the modern version, I guess, of what we need it to be. I think also part of that Indigenous education is, very much the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and their findings, and incorporating that into today's society.
Right.
Like there are the 94 calls to action, but a lot of people in Canada still don't know about them, still don't know even what it's about.
Right.
And so I think that, it's wonderful that the government has done this, but I think they could take it a little bit farther and still make it more acceptable,
right,
or broader, so that everyday people know what the 94 calls to action. I think with youth and getting back to land-based teachings also is very important. And I'd like to see that brought into the schools. There's so many young adults that have no clue. And so if we can take those land-based teachings back into the schools and reintroduce it there, it just becomes a natural part of who they are.
Right.
Even if the parents don't know, because we've lost that.
Right.
If we can bring it into the schools, maybe the youth could actually reconnect with their parents and bring that teaching to their parents.
Right, work backwards.
It doesn't always have to be one directional teaching. It can be a two-directional teaching. I would like to see more people attending the blanket exercise. I think that when you have that conversation and somebody says, "Oh, I've been to one," or "I've been to 3," and every single time the experience is different, and they've picked up something different, and they've learned something new, because you can attend it more than once and learn something different every single time. And so that when you speak about the blanket exercise, people aren't like, oh, I've never heard of that,
Yeah.
and they think that it's something that they can attend or shouldn't attend, or they're scared to attend.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That it's a program.
that it's a program, and where it's just an experience and it's a learning opportunity, and it's 2 hours out of their day. I think just society becoming a little bit more acceptable of Indigenous education, and not that it's its own thing, but it's just part of everything. You know, the Canada has taken so long with having their version of Canadian history and education, and we have this whole other side that is here that isn't being acknowledged. And so I think bringing that movement and bringing that education into the school systems, into everyday society, like having these opportunities in the public library where we have a TV and we have a whole trolley of Indigenous authors and books on Indigenous people is really, really important. And it needs to be a little bit more acceptable in Northern Alberta. You go down into Vancouver Island and you see the West Coast Indians, and their art and their culture is everywhere, from the lodges to the totem poles to the canoes that are sitting out. Culture is just so vibrant there.
Yeah.
Where here it just seems so hidden yet.